Most people want to see the finished results, but the truth is, the deepest work happens long before anything looks finished. Before the walls go up, before the paint, before the furniture, before anything beautiful starts taking shape, there's digging. A whole lot of digging. What's up, guys? It's your girl, Aleta Israel. Welcome back to Aleta Israel TV. Today, I wanted to show y'all a part of the build that doesn't always make it to the highlight reel, but it matters just as much as everything else. What you're watching right now is the beginning of the septic tank. Before the blocks, before the chambers, before the structure, it starts right here with the hole. And not just a small hole either. We're talking roughly 10 feet deep down in the ground. Straight groundwork by hand, shovel by shovel, load by load. When you watch it sped up like this, it almost looks easy. But in real time, this is serious labor. This takes strength. This takes endurance. This takes patience. These men come in around 8 in the morning, work through the heat, break for lunch, then get back at it until around 4 p.m. day after day. Same effort, same consistency. And that's the part I respect because construction will humble you real quick. There's nothing instant about it. There's no shortcut around the labor. Sometimes progress looks dramatic, and sometimes progress just looks like moving dirt from one place to another for hours. And even though it may not look exciting, it's necessary. Every shovelful matters. Every inch deeper matters. Every measurement matters. And I think that's why building has taught me so much about life. Because sometimes your biggest progress doesn't look impressive while it's happening. Sometimes progress looks repetitive. Sometimes it looks slow. Sometimes it looks like work, quiet work, heavy work, the client nobody care about. But it's still progress. And without it, nothing else can be built. Watching this reminds me that foundations demand sacrifice. You don't build on top first. You build down first. You go into the ground first. You create space first. You prepare first. And only after that can something strong sit on top of it. That applies to houses. And honestly, it applies to people too. Sometimes before life adds something new, it digs something out first. Sometimes before the blessing shows up, there's a season of clearing, a season of labor, a season where everything feels underground. And it's hard to understand while you're in it, but later you realize the space had to be made. That's what this part feels like to me. Preparation, making room, building capacity, creating a base for what comes next. And if the digging isn't right, everything after it feels it, which is why nobody rushes this stage. It has to be measured. It has to be deep enough, wide enough, strong enough, because everything that comes next depends on what happens right here. And honestly, that's what I love about documenting these moments, because once this part is covered, nobody will really see it again. Once the tank is complete, once the ground is back over it, this disappears. People will walk past it, stand over it, live over it, and never know what went into it. But we'll know. Y'all watching this now will know. The workers know, and I know how much labor it took, how much precision it took, how much time it took just to get to the starting point. And now that the digging is done, the real structure begins. Now, before we get into today's build update, I just want to take a quick moment to say thank you to everyone who has been watching these videos, supporting this journey, leaving comments, sharing encouragement, and truly growing with me through this process. I appreciate you more than you may know. A lot of what you're seeing come together here has been built piece by piece over time with vision and faith and support from this community. And one of the biggest ways many of you have supported me is through my book, From the Gutter to Ghana. Every purchase truly means something to me. It doesn't just support me as an author, it directly supports the work you're watching unfold here in real time. From the house to the land to the landscaping to the vision continuing to come to life here in Ghana. So if you've been meaning to grab a copy, it's available now on Amazon. And if you'd like to get a signed copy sent directly from Ghana, you can order it anytime at aletaisrael.com. And if you've been enjoying this channel, if these videos have taught you something, inspired you, encouraged you, or simply given you a new perspective on life here in Ghana, I'd love for you to help me continue sharing that story. Leave a comment below, subscribe if you haven't already, and feel free to share this video with someone else who might enjoy the journey. My hope with documenting all of this is bigger than just building a house. It's about showing another side of Ghana, of Africa, a side rooted in creativity, possibility, development, beauty, and everyday life. A side that deserves to be seen. So thank you for helping me tell that story and for helping me share it with the world. Now let's get into today's build. This part right here, most people will never see. When people think about building a house, they think about the paint, the furniture, the lighting, the pretty parts. But this is what actually makes the house function. What you're looking at is the septic tank system. And everything that happens in this space determines how this entire home runs behind the scenes. Every sink, every shower, every toilet, it all leads here. And if this isn't done right, nothing else works. This is a septic tank system built on site using blocks and mortar. It's designed to collect and process all the wastewater coming from the house. So instead of waste being sent somewhere else, everything is handled right here on the property. It's underground, it's hidden, but it's one of the most important systems in the entire build because this is where all the used water goes after it leaves your home. Now this system is built in 3 separate chambers, side by side. Each chamber has its own role, and together they create a step-by-step filtration process. The blocks are laid, sealed, and plastered to make the structure strong and watertight. Everything has to be measured properly. The depth, the spacing, the alignment. Because once this is closed, it's not something you want to keep having to go back in to fix. This is one of those do it right the first time parts of the construction. The first chamber is where everything enters. All the waste from the house flows directly into this space. This is where the heavy work happens. Solid waste settles down to the bottom. Lighter materials rise to the top, and the liquid stays in the middle. This chamber is designed to slow everything down so separation can begin. Nothing here is rushed. Everything is about giving the waste time to break down and settle. From there, the liquid flows into the second chamber. Not everything makes it through. Only the more broken down wastewater moves forward. This is the second stage of filtering, and remaining particles continue to settle. The water becomes a little cleaner here, a little lighter, a little more processed. This chamber is about refining what came from the first stage, letting gravity do its job again, letting time do its job again. Then it moves into the third chamber. This is the final stage inside the tank. At this point, most of the heavy material has already been separated. So what's left is mostly liquid. This chamber allows for one more round of settling, one more level of separation before anything leaves the system. By the time it exits here, the water is much more filtered than when it first came in. From the last chamber, the water flows out into something called the soakaway. This is where the ground takes over. The water is released into the soil, and the earth naturally filters it even further. So this entire system works in stages. What starts inside the house ends back in the earth and is done in a controlled and structured way. Everything you see here is built below ground level, measured, dug, and constructed to handle years of use. The depth matters, the alignment matters, the ceiling matters, because once this is covered, it becomes permanent. This isn't surface work, this is foundational. This is the kind of work that supports the house without ever being seen. Even though this system is built to last, it still needs to be respected. Over time, solid waste builds up and eventually it has to be removed. That's part of owning a system like this. What goes down your drains matters. How you use your water matters because everything ends up here. This is one of those systems where small habits make a big difference over time. This right here is not the glamorous part of building, but it is one of the most important because this is what keeps everything running quietly in the background. You won't see it when the house is finished. You won't think about it every day, but it's working every single day. And this is what building from the ground up really looks like. Not just what's above the surface, but everything underneath it too. Now let's talk about maintenance because this is where ownership becomes very real. A septic tank can last a long time when it's built properly, maintained properly, and maintenance is a part of that system. The solid waste collecting in that first chamber does not stay there forever without consequence. Eventually, the tank has to be emptied, meaning the accumulated solid waste has to be pumped out. If that is ignored for too long, the tank can lose effective volume. Solids can start moving further into the system than they should, and the soak away can become stressed. This is why what gets flushed matters. A septic tank is designed to handle human waste and normal wastewater. But people often create problems by treating toilets and drains like garbage bins. When materials that do not break down easily are flushed, they add to the solid waste burden and can cause clogging or faster filling. So systems like this work best when they are respected. Another important thing to understand is that septic treatment is partial, not complete. The tank reduces solids and begins biological breakdown, but it is not the final end of all treatment by itself. That is why the downstream part of the system matters too. The last chamber sends out wastewater, not raw sewage, but still not something that should be treated casually. It still needs the soak away and the surrounding soil conditions to do their part. So when people see a septic tank under construction, they may just see blocks, cement, trenches, and workers moving around. But what is really being built is an underground treatment system that quietly supports daily life. It makes bathrooms functional. It makes kitchens functional. It makes the home livable. This is one of those hidden systems that never gets praised when it works, but everybody notices when it fails. And that is really the story of construction. The best parts of a build are not always the loudest parts. Some of the most important work is buried underground, covered up, and never shown again. But that does not make it less important. In fact, it probably makes it more important. Because once a family starts living in a house, the goal is not just beauty. The goal is reliability. The goal is that the home works day after day, year after year, and reliability starts with systems like this being built the right way from the beginning. So this septic tank is more than a pit. It is more like a box underground. It is a carefully built multi-chamber wastewater system. The first chamber receives the raw waste and lets the heavy solids settle into solid waste. That solid waste begins to break down by decomposing over time, but it does not disappear. So it must eventually be pumped out. The second chamber continues the settling process. The third chamber gives the liquid a final stage before it exits. And from there, the filtered water flows onto the soakaway for further filtering through the earth. This is what is happening here. This is infrastructure. This is function. This is long-term thinking. And this is what building from the ground up in Ghana really looks like. And I think that's the part people don't always see when they watch a build like this. They see the finished house. They see the reveal. They see the paint colors, the tile, the furniture, the lights turning on. But they don't always see what happens underneath it first. They don't always see the trenches, the planning, the labor, the measurements, the systems that have to be in place before a home can ever feel like a home. And honestly, this is the part I've learned to respect the most because building teaches you patience in a way nothing else can. You can't rush every stage. Some parts have to happen before the next part can begin. You can't tile before the plumbing is done. You can't paint before the walls are ready. And you definitely can't live comfortably in a house if the systems underneath were ignored. That's why every part matters, even the parts nobody claps for, even the parts buried underground, even the parts that disappear once the project moves on. Because just because it won't be seen later doesn't mean it isn't carrying weight. And honestly, there's something deeper in that. Because I feel like building a house has taught me a lot about life too. A lot of what holds us up, nobody sees. The discipline nobody claps for, the hard conversations, the private sacrifices, the rebuilding seasons, the decisions made when nobody's watching, the things happening beneath the surface. That's the foundation. And foundations are interesting because once they're covered, nobody really talks about them anymore. But everything above them depends on them. Everything. People will walk over this space every day and never think twice about what's beneath their feet. But I'll know, the workers will know, and now you know too. And that's the beauty of documenting a build from the ground up in Ghana. You're not just watching a house go up, you're watching an entire system come together. One detail at a time, one decision at a time, one layer at a time, until eventually what once looked like land becomes home. And that part never gets old to me. Anyway, back to building my life in Ghana, y'all. Thank y'all for watching. Make sure you press that like, subscribe, and cut your post notifications on so you don't miss anything. Thank you guys for being here with me tonight. Bye.